Uh, a very good afternoon to all, and apologies once again. Like I will be talking in English since I have my time limit is also just 10 minutes. I'll stick to the time limit. Also, I am extremely happy to be on this dais along with among the great scholars within the country and abroad, and uh, thank you once again to PITSA for such an honor to be part of this initiative and also try to engage with this important dialogue forward. Before I begin my given topic, which is looking at um, social movements in India and the questions of survival. Uh, Before that, I would like to put on record that as far as my social location is concerned, though I am brought up in Malappuram, and my social location in terms of engaging with people's movements also stems with regard to my association with the student Christian movement during my college days, as well as the struggle within the CSI youth movement. Post that, my engagement with different social movements of close to a decade in terms of a solidarity worker, in terms of trying to engage with social movements through research or helping them with campaigns or uh, other related works in terms of their negotiations has been my engagement with social movements, and perhaps that might be one of the criteria where I stand. So I put that on record at this point of time. What is that? I mean, I've been hearing different angles in which the debates have been going, and uh, so I will just narrate 2, 3 important facts within the social movements in India, and I will be limiting myself basically to natural resource dependent communities, which means the traditional communities who are dependent on the forest, water, and land. And I am sticking towards the rural communities only within the central India belt and parts of South India. I am not taking Northeast as my part of an engagement because I have not been that much engaged in issues of that level, though I'm aware of it. And I have not also kept in mind when I say that the urban struggles which are happening, be it the garment worker struggle, be it the domestic worker struggle, I have not kept in mind when I'm actually having this articulation. So that definitely will be a limitation in my articulation at this point of time. Uh, People's movements have been called different names, different terminologies at different points of time post independence. Be it action groups, be it people's movements, then came the terminology new social movements. Now, at least as far as the civil society is concerned, it is civic action, which is the new terminology which is on the block at this point of time. What has actually happened in the last 10, 15 years as far as the social movements are concerned? Number one is the situation of dialogue has moved from the situation of dialogue to the negotiation by the community leadership. This shift has gradually happened, and it needs to be acknowledged that the leadership pattern within the social movements or people's movements is in a state where the leadership is gradually shifting towards a community level kind of a leadership, where the community leaders who own up the issue and are part of the community are slowly being able to move forward in the process of bargaining and negotiating with the government, be it the local level self-governance system or at the national level self-governance system. One simple instance which I would like to state would be the whole debate around bringing the policy known as Forest Rights Act implementation. And the name is also very important, the Scheduled Tribes and the Other Traditional Dwellers Act. This is the complete name of the act. The Scheduled Tribe and Other Traditional Forest Dwellers Recognition of Forest Rights Act. As far as this important dialogue of Dalit-Muslim is concerned, it's important to also to understand that how has this policy been come to the forefront. Whether it's being implemented or not is a different question entirely. But the debate between the scheduled tribes vis-a-vis the other traditional dwelling communities in the forest, when you say the other traditional dwelling communities in the forest, we are talking about the Gujar community, for example, or else other communities apart from the scheduled tribe who are listed in the constitution. What has been this whole debate around forming this policy itself? And it was not a very easy kind of situation when this whole debate was happening. One important thing which we need to keep in mind also, the people's movement's core area of focus has been on the issue of survival and dignity. Now, if the debate on that one is it pre-modern or post-modern, for me at this point of time will be a different debate. But the core crux of people's movements have been the issue of survival and dignity. Be it in the case of claiming land, whether it's the issue of anti-displacement, whether it's the issue of choosing their right to live on their own land, is a very important crux of this debate as far as survival and dignity is concerned. So when we have this kinds of dialogues, especially I would look at this kind of a dialogue as the initial dialogues of friendship between Dalits and Muslims and Bahujans. I think there should be some kind of our dream might be to form a fraternity and a sorority among communities. But where is that? The whole engagement with the people's social movements come inside the picture also is very important, because as far as a community, people's movements or social movements are also not a homogeneous category for that matter, and it also evolves in different regions and different spaces according to its regional, social, political, economic context too. So I would put that also on record, so that it's a learning process for this kind of dialogue, as well as it's also trying to learn back to when we actually engage. What kind of process will we be engaging in this kind of a relationship? The slogans of movements is very important to note. The slogans, the songs, the narratives. If at all the researchers were doing PhDs on social movements, at this point of time, with the advent of technology, with the advent of this one, it's the community leaders' voices which are being trying to be articulated at different levels. And there are different initiatives which are led by the community in terms of having crisscross engagements, in terms of the leaders moving to other spaces too. For example, last year, one of the initiatives which has been seen was the coming together of 30 to 40 movement leaders on the issue of Kashmir, going to Kashmir. And perhaps in the history of post-independent India, that might be the first initiative where this many leaders went to Kashmir from the so-called mainland to actually have an interaction, which also gives a far more insight on the notion of nation, on the notion of state, on the notion of other issues which are happening over there, which is a learning process in this whole scenario. So the otherizing process which happens also needs to be somewhere or other. How will we actually have this learning process of actually opening up our ears and eyes to the situations around? I would like to say that there are different kinds of responses by the state. In today's political scenario, it is not what is in the UPA 1 or UPA 2 scenario, where I would not say the movements did a kind of an engagement. It was the mid-level groups, you can call it NGOs or support groups of movements, who actually got into a truce with the government to actually talk about something known as the National Advisory Council. You should see the names of the people inside the National Advisory Council. So National Advisory Council became the middle man, middle woman role to actually negotiate this one for the movements, which fundamentally, which I see was problematic and is problematic for that kind of engagement, where the community has that strength and articulation mechanisms to voice their concerns, The role of this kinds of support organizations should be limited only to facilitate that process, not to be their voice. This is fundamentally one of the greatest mistakes which has been made very clearly, and therefore when the new government is coming, the whole concept of advocacy is out inside the dustbin. So that becomes a very untouchable word for the support groups. So I would recommend therefore that multiple things are happening and multiple processes are happening within the social movements. Therefore, is it a possibility to have a multiple linear critical engagement with these processes? It might merge at some point of time, it might not merge, but understanding this process and having a critical engagement in a multiple linear form, I don't know whether linear is like this or not, I'm not telling that, but there are these processes which are happening which one needs to be aware of. And is it possible that these kinds of small initiatives reach to larger grassroots level, and what are the intersections which are possible to also look multiple issues through different frames and try to assimilate it so that we build a better strategy. So we have a set of negotiation agenda as well as a set of proposals too. I will end with just this one slogan. The Narmada Bachao movement or the NAPM movement also in 1990s came with this slogan for in India known as Hum Sab Ek Hai. It meant that we are all alike. In 2018, we find Meera, a comrade of ours who has moved now out of Narmada Bachao Anil to do National Alliance of People's Movements work, comes out with the slogan, Hum Sab Anek Hai, Fir Bhi Ek Hai. We are all diverse, but we stay united. So I would like to rest my arguments and thoughts on this process. Once again, thanks a lot and looking forward for this initiatives further. Thank you.